Hi, welcome to the first in a series of web talks that I'll be releasing over the next few months. In this one, I really wanted to explore a belief or a mantra that seems to be woven into the fabric of psychiatry. This belief that we should neither confront nor collude with beliefs that are seen as delusional. So let's get back to the beginning. What is meant by this word delusion? I think simply put, a delusional belief is thought to be one that's out of step with consensual reality, one that people in your subculture or your culture just simply wouldn't agree with. Obviously, the idea of this consensual reality can be quite a problematic one. It suggests that there's truth out there that we can all agree on, but I think it's helpful to remember that we all have a different experience of this world and different beliefs about it, and the process of really making a judgment about someone else's beliefs is incredibly subjective. Um, so let's just put that sort of more philosophical argument to the side, otherwise I'll probably get a bit trapped in that one. But let's think about, is it just about whether this belief is seen as true or false that qualifies it as a delusion or not? And I think it's actually something more than that. It seems like it's something about the content, the way the belief is held, or its intensity, or its impact on the person and the people around them, that really leads someone to label a certain belief as delusional. This idea that it's maybe disturbing or troubling in some way, and it's troubling to such an extent that we're quite concerned about it. So how do we react to these troubling beliefs? I think clinicians, carers, people within the mental health system are generally trained to neither confront nor collude with someone's belief. And on face value, that seems kind of sensible. Years back, I believed that I was at the centre of an alien experiment. So people saying, "No, you're wrong, Rachel, you're clearly very ill, stop being stupid," would never be helpful. But then equally, someone saying, "Yes, you are possessed by an alien, run, get out of here," that wouldn't be helpful to me either. But these are sort of clearly defined poles, but it's the grey area in the middle that I think is really interesting and also a bit more difficult to navigate. And it's this grey area where most of the helpful conversations around belief generally take place. I've sort of talked with quite a few different people around how they navigate this area, and often there's quite a lot of anxiety. There's this idea that because the word collusion is kind of, it's there but it's poorly defined. It's as if there's this invisible line in the sand that we might accidentally trip over and cause this terrible, irreparable damage to somebody, and kind of if we fall over it, something terrible will happen to us as well. There's this kind of like bogeyman, I guess, that we're trying to avoid. And that can lead to people sticking very close to the confronting side of the line, because at least you know what that is. So people might say something along the lines of, "I know this feels real for you, but I really think that once things have calmed down a little bit, once you're feeling better, you'll recognise this is part of your illness, or this is part of psychosis, or this is part of a reaction to trauma." Or we might even avoid talking about beliefs at all, kind of using distraction to really close down the conversations so that we know that we're nowhere near sort of straying over that collusion line. But that status quo just really isn't great, is it? It leaves people really struggling to cope with these overwhelming beliefs, but having no one to talk to about it. And our beliefs are really crucial, I think, to the way that we see ourselves. Holding a belief that even the mental health professionals who are paid really to listen to you, but holding a belief that even they can't hear or are scared of, that sends a really clear message that ourselves or parts of ourselves or parts of our reality are just simply unacceptable. It's the ultimate invalidation. And when I talk about this, it kind of reminds me of the tricks of an abuser, the invalidation of a child's reality. And this is a core technique of abuse. It ensures silence, protects the abuser who's in truth kind of doing something incredibly, deeply and fundamentally wrong and illegal. So what do we mean by collusion? If we step outside of psychiatry and we look to the wider world, how is it used? And I think, the kind of sentences that collusion's used in are things like officials collude with traffickers, unscrupulous people colluding with large power companies, um, people denying colluding with paedophile groups. And collusion is sort of defined as an agreement between people to act together secretly or illegally in order to deceive or cheat somebody. And it usually occurs between or with powerful organisations or people, all companies, banks, governments, professionals, organised abuse rings. So let's kind of ask ourselves, like, why is it that we use this word within the field of mental health when the people that we're working with have often been incredibly disempowered? And in that context, those of us that work in mental health are very much the ones with the power. So if we talk about someone's belief, no matter how unusual, why is it that we fear colluding with them? I mean, who are we colluding with, or who are we worried about colluding with? I think there's many more issues beneath this than a little video short can explore, but one thing that strikes me is when we're talking about collusion, we're not thinking that we're talking about colluding with the person. We're kind of believing that we might be colluding with this belief, and I think that's really interesting. There's almost this idea that if we give this belief any air or any space, that it will kind of grow forwards and envelop us and squish our own sense of reality and overwhelm everybody, as if this belief is somehow this terrifying presence or kind of being that's separate from the person that can really just attack. And I think that says something more about our sense of ourselves and our kind of tentative relationship with reality than the person that we're trying to support. I think it's no coincidence that the themes that we see in people's beliefs, these themes of possession, of aliens, of powerlessness, of external control and lack of body integrity, that these are beliefs that really appear in popular culture, kind of within the media, within books, within TV, within film, and they're beliefs that we seem to be both fascinated with, but also quite terrified of, and I kind of wonder whether one of the reasons that we might push away these beliefs is that they just feel a bit too close for comfort. They resonate with maybe some of our own anxieties, and it's much easier to kind of push them away than kind of look at them and sort of accept or acknowledge what it is that's triggered for us. So again, who or what are we colluding with? I think returning to the idea that beliefs termed as delusions are somehow seen as separate to the person, as alien, does this really make sense? Can we actually untangle so-called delusional beliefs from okay beliefs? If we had a psychic knife, could we sort of excise them and separate them as if they're some kind of parasite or external presence? And I think no, actually no. Beliefs are multi-layered, they're complex, dynamic, they shift and change, and they're not separate from the person. They're part of our active way of making sense of the world and our experiences. And the idea that they are separate is just, nonsensical. So when we're saying we're afraid of colluding with someone's beliefs, what we're kind of really saying is that we're afraid of colluding with the person themselves. And this is the person we're trying to support, the person that's statistically at least likely to have experienced multiple forms of discrimination, prejudice, victimisation. And also talking about people's beliefs or talking with people about their beliefs and validating them doesn't really involve anything secret, illegal, or it's not about cheating or deception, nothing that's really usually associated with the word collusion. It's simply providing a space for someone to feel heard, for someone to sort of have space to explore their experiences and find ways of living with them. So in our efforts to avoid colluding with the person, who or what are we really colluding with? This is a difficult one really, because it's useful to think, well, who benefits from the silence? Who benefits from beliefs not being talked about? And I think society benefits to a degree. If we locate the problem within the individual, we don't have to look at the wider issues, we don't have to change anything. I think biological psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry benefit in terms of it being seen very much as an illness that can be medicated or gotten rid of. But I think ultimately, and most worryingly and uncomfortably, the people that benefit are the perpetrators of abuse. this is a hard kind of thing to say, really, isn't it? None of us want to collude with abusers, yet I keep coming back to this every time I explore this issue. Layers of victimisation, layers of oppression, and by buying into this sort of, we're not only just failing to help the people that we're trying to support, we're kind of participating, taking an active role in this ongoing cycle of oppression. Denying someone's reality is a really, really aggressive act. It's an act of violence. And I think it's one that we need to be extremely mindful of in the mental health system, precisely because of the experiences of many of the people we're working with. So it's all very well kind of kicking collusions out, but what do we do instead? If we stopped worrying about collusion, how would we support people? I think this is there's no easy answers to this, and I think there really, really shouldn't be. It's complex, and human beings are complex. It's about a relationship having space to develop over time, about journeying with somebody. But here are a few principles that I kind of find really, really useful. I think the first one is never to lie. This is just a fundamental. It's not about collusion. It's not about the stuff that I've talked about today. It's just about my own integrity. I think also I try not to assume that my version of reality is important or relevant to the person that I'm working with. It doesn't mean that I need to kind of bring it in every time I speak with them, or they speak about their beliefs just to reinforce that it exists. If they want to talk about my perspective, that's fine, but I don't assume that that's the case. So I also try and work really at being comfortable with not knowing, the sense of uncertainty, of knowing some of the territory maybe, or some of the tools, but not thinking that I know the direction someone wants to go in or will go in. And the idea that maybe if you walk alongside somebody, you might be surprised by the journey as well, and you're actually doing this together rather than pushing or pulling somebody in a particular direction. I think it's quite important to actually ask the person what it is that they want, what might be helpful for them. Do they want to question things, test things out, or look at it from different perspectives, or look for other meanings or other layers? Or is it that they just want to find a way of dealing within that belief system? I try and really listen to my own reactions, my own feelings, and kind of acknowledge my own struggles with reality and my own fears, and learning how to feel grounded when supporting someone who's quite overwhelmed by their reality I found extremely helpful. And then I think finally I've very much find it useful to listen critically to the things that I say or the things that I think about somebody. I think many of us have a line, and up until that line we feel quite comfortable talking open-mindedly about many different experiences. But then once this line is crossed, we can react with anxiety and fear. It's like a reality button being pressed, I guess. And when that button is pressed, I can kind of hear myself using or thinking in more distancing terms, not really being with the person and their experiences, or using sort of more clinical language to think or speak about someone. And when that happens, I find it really useful just to kind of back off, take a deep breath and go like, what was that? Seriously, what did I just say there? What did I just think? And most importantly, why did I just say or think that? Why did I do that? It's quite out of character. And use it as a point of my own development to help move that line a little bit further, so I get more comfortable in talking about distressing and overwhelming beliefs, rather than kind of pushing that back on the person and kind of putting them in a box. So in summary, I think that the use of the word collusion in psychiatry says much more about us and our fears than the experience of the person that we're trying to support. And I think it's time for a shift of focus. It's not so much about handing the microphone back to the person. I think it's much more about us not stealing that microphone in the first place, and just giving the person some space to express their experiences in a way that makes sense to them without having to change or reframe it all the time. I think if we spent less time worrying about this collusion thing, and we'd spend more time really being with the person who's in distress, and rather than inadvertently colluding with perpetrators of abuse and victimisation, hopefully we could be part of somebody's own healing journey. So I hope that some of this has been useful or interesting to you, or has maybe stimulated some of your own thinking. If you'd like to sort of engage in a debate or a dialogue about this, that'd be fantastic. Check out my website, which is behindthelabel.co.uk.